Impossible odds remained a symbol of hope, strength, and the power hidden within what others called fragile. And as the human looked up at the stars that night, bloodied but unbowed, he whispered softly to himself, "Fragile, yes, but unbreakable. That is what makes us human." The galaxy had learned the lesson. Humanity had not only survived, humanity had left its mark, a legacy of courage that would echo across time and space, inspiring all who doubted and reminding all who watched that even the smallest, most fragile beings could change the course of history. After the battle, the arena was empty, but the echoes of what had happened lingered in every corner. The alien warrior who had fallen first now walked slowly among the cadets, teaching them with a new respect for humans. The human, bloodied and bruised, stepped out into the open corridors of the Galactic Academy, where holographic screens displayed news from across star systems. Reports of his victory were everywhere. The words fragile human were now paired with unstoppable, legendary, and inspirational. The human paused to watch a small group of cadets training nearby. They were struggling with agility drills, weapons handling, endurance tests. But every move reminded him of the lessons he had learned on Mars, of every teammate who had fallen, and every battle that had demanded everything he had. He knelt to adjust the gear of a young alien cadet, showing them a small adjustment in stance, a way to redirect energy, a human trick that seemed almost too simple to work. The cadet looked up in wonder. "How can one human know so much?" they asked quietly. The human smiled faintly, answering only, "We adapt, we endure." That is all. News from distant planets began to pour in. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity now sent envoys requesting training, alliance, or just knowledge. Reports showed humans outperforming alien units in simulations, tactics, and survival drills. The humans' actions had not only changed perceptions, they had begun a shift in the balance of interstellar respect. The colonel, once the proud critic who had mocked humanity, now walked through the corridors beside him. His silver scales shimmered under the academy lights, and his voice was quieter, softer. "You've done something I never imagined possible," he said. "You've changed everything here. They will remember this." "We will remember this." The human nodded, eyes scanning the vast open space above them. Beyond the academy, the stars stretched in every direction, galaxies spinning, planets circling. Each of them a world that might underestimate humanity, but now maybe think twice. Days turned to weeks, and the human continued training, instructing, inspiring. The alien warrior he had defeated often sparred with him, not to win, but to learn. Every strike, every maneuver, every tactic was analyzed and studied. The human became a teacher, not just a fighter, and in doing so extended the lessons he had proven in the arena. Courage, adaptability, and the power hidden in the so-called fragile. Across the galaxy, stories were told in schools, in training halls, in council chambers. The human who broke the strongest warrior in one move became a legend, repeated over and over, inspiring new generations of both humans and aliens. Some laughed, some doubted, some cried, but all were changed. The human did not seek glory. He moved quietly among cadets, adjusting grips, correcting stances, offering encouragement. Yet everywhere he went, his presence reminded everyone, humanity was not to be underestimated. Weeks later, the human stood on a balcony overlooking the academy's training grounds. Cadets practiced below, humans and aliens together, exchanging knowledge, pushing limits. A young alien approached, hesitant but eager. "Sir," they said, "do you think humans can survive against any opponent?" The human looked down, a faint smile crossing his bruised face. "It's not about surviving," he said. "It's about standing no matter what tries to push you down. Fragile, yes, but unbreakable." The young alien nodded, understanding more than words could say. Across the galaxy, envoys arrived offering collaboration and alliances. Leaders who had once dismissed humans now asked for insight, training, and advice. The academy itself changed. Courses were rewritten, strategies reimagined, and the human approach to combat was studied at the highest levels. The human became not just a warrior, but a symbol, a living example of what humanity could achieve. Even the alien warrior he had bested spoke often of him, teaching the story of the fight as a lesson in respect, resilience, and the true measure of strength. One night, the human looked up at the stars, thinking of every world that had doubted him, every opponent who had thought him weak, every teammate who had never returned. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Fragility is a choice. Courage is a decision. Humanity is unstoppable." And somewhere in distant galaxies, beings whispered the same words to each other, repeating the tale, passing it on, spreading it like a spark that would ignite generations. The human story was no longer just about a single fight. It had become a movement, a legend, a lesson that would endure across time and space. From the smallest cadet in the academy to the mightiest leader of a distant planet, all knew, underestimate humanity at your peril. The human finally turned away from the balcony, stepping back into the academy. His body ached, his mind was weary, yet he walked tall, head high, spirit unbroken. Behind him, the academy bustled with activity, training, learning, growing. But everywhere he walked, cadets paused, aliens whispered, and humans smiled quietly, knowing that one individual had proven something timeless. Strength is not just physical. Strength is spirit. Strength is courage. Strength is standing, even when everything tells you to fall. And so the legend of the fragile human who was unbreakable continued, spreading across worlds, inspiring generations, and reminding all who listened that even the smallest, seemingly weakest beings could change the course of history. The galaxy had changed. The human's victory in the arena was no longer a rumor or a legend. It was a challenge whispered across star systems. Everywhere, alien commanders, cadets, and diplomats spoke of the human who had faced the strongest warrior and stood unbroken. Yet not all were impressed with the lesson. In shadowed corners of distant worlds, factions whispered of weakness in unity, plotting, observing, waiting for the right moment. The human had become more than a warrior. He had become a symbol, a spark in the galaxy that threatened established power. And sparks, as always, attract fire. Far beyond the academy, in a fortress hidden in the asteroid belt of the Corran system, a council of alien generals gathered. They were powerful, ruthless, and not accustomed to failure. Screens flickered with footage of the arena battle, the human moving, dodging, striking, standing, when none expected him to. One general slammed a clawed hand onto the table. "This is unacceptable," he hissed. "A fragile species has humiliated our best. Their tactics, their endurance, they cannot be allowed to spread." Another general leaned forward, eyes glowing red. "We must strike before they grow stronger. If this human can survive our academy, what can he do in open war?" Plans were drawn, fleets dispatched, and spies sent across systems. The human's presence had already inspired hope on countless planets, but now it was attracting danger. Back at the academy, the human trained relentlessly. He moved through drills, ran simulations, and sparred with both humans and aliens. His body was bruised, battered, but his mind was sharper than ever. He knew that strength was not measured by past victories, but by preparation for future threats. Cadets watched him inspired, trying to emulate the precision and calm he displayed in battle. He taught them that endurance was as much about mental clarity as it was about physical skill. One cadet, a small alien with green scales and bright eyes, asked quietly, "Sir, what if someone stronger than the warrior comes?" The human paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "Then we fight," he said simply. "We learn, we adapt, and we do not break." Meanwhile, the alien generals' fleets moved quietly, almost undetected, toward the human's home system. Recon drones probed the planets, scanning for weaknesses, while agents infiltrated colonies trying to learn human tactics. The galaxy was shifting, and the fragile human at the center had unknowingly become the spark of a brewing war. One night, the human stood on a cliff overlooking the training grounds. The twin moons rose above the horizon, casting a pale glow over the academy. He could feel the weight of his actions, the responsibility of being more than one soldier. He was a symbol now, a standard. His mind raced with possibilities. Enemies unseen, threats untested, allies still learning. He knew the battles ahead would be unlike anything he had faced. A transmission arrived, encrypted, its origin unknown. He opened it. The message was simple but chilling. "You have proven fragile can be strong. Now prepare for the cost." The human's eyes narrowed. His hands clenched into fists. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Then we prepare. They will see that fragile does not mean weak." Across the academy, alarms began to ring. Scouts had detected unusual movement in nearby space. Fleets not seen before, massive ships, weapons systems ready. The human turned to the cadets and instructors. "Listen," he said, voice steady despite fatigue. "We've trained for this, for every obstacle, for every enemy who underestimates us. Today the real test begins. Stand tall. Do not falter. Fragility is our shield. Courage is our weapon. Humanity is unbreakable." Showing dominance without cruelty, the audience held their collective breath, waiting, unsure if this fragile creature would finally fall. But he did not. He stood tall, the dust and sparks from the battle settling around him, every muscle tense but unyielding. The alien warrior roared, frustration mixing with disbelief, and then sank to his knees, realizing he could not defeat this human, could not match the courage, the willpower, the unbreakable spirit in front of him. The cadets whispered among themselves. "That human, he's different. I've never seen anything like this. Fragile, no. He's unstoppable." The human's eyes scanned the arena, the wounded alien, the cadets, the colonel, and finally the banners of every species hanging above. Among them, the small tattered flag of Earth moved in the wind, a quiet symbol of resilience. The human lifted his head slightly, his voice calm but strong enough to carry across the hall. "Fragility is not weakness. We feel everything and still we fight. We rise when others fall. That is what makes us strong." The crowd erupted, cheers mixing with stunned silence. The alien cadets, who had expected an easy fight, looked on with new respect. The colonel, still sitting, slowly nodded, acknowledging the lesson he had learned the hard way. He waved a claw, signaling the end of the round. The gong sounded, but it seemed weaker than the sounds of awe that filled the arena. The human breathed deeply, his chest rising and falling steadily, though his body screamed in protest. His muscles were sore, his ribs burned, but he had proven something greater than victory. He had proven the spirit of humanity. The alien warrior, now on the ground, looked up with a flicker of understanding. For all his size, his weapons, his training, he had been outmatched not by strength but by courage, strategy, and unyielding will. The human stepped back, lowering his fists, blood dripping from his cuts, his body exhausted but his eyes bright. Every cadet, every officer, every observer knew they had just witnessed history. The whispers spread fast like wildfire. "The human!" Undefeated. The strongest alien, defeated in one move. We underestimated them. And we paid the price. The colonel finally spoke, his voice low, reverent, and slightly trembling. "I misjudged your species. You are not fragile, you are unstoppable." The human nodded slightly, acknowledging the words, not with pride but with quiet satisfaction. His mission had been accomplished. He had shown everyone that humanity could endure, adapt, and conquer when underestimated. Outside the arena, news feeds and communication channels began to light up with reports. Images and messages spread quickly. A human had faced the strongest alien warrior and survived. A human had stood when all others expected collapse. Across the galaxy, whispers began. If a human can do this, what else can they accomplish? The human, bruised, bloodied, and tired, looked at the alien warrior one last time. He extended a hand, not as a gesture of mockery, but as a symbol of respect. The alien hesitated, then grasped it, his eyes showing recognition. Strength, after all, was not only in muscle or weapons. It was in spirit, will, and the refusal to give up. The human stepped away, breathing hard, looking at the crowd, looking at the academy, looking at the galaxy that had doubted him. He knew this was more than a fight. It was a message. Fragile did not mean weak. Humanity had been underestimated, and now that perception had changed forever. The crowd continued to cheer, the cadets whispering to each other, some already imagining what it would be like to train alongside such a human, learning tactics, endurance, and spirit. The alien warrior lowered his head, defeated but enlightened. Even the colonel, usually cruel and unshakable, could not hide his admiration. "Let it be known," he said quietly. "Humans are not fragile. They are a force to be reckoned with." The human, though exhausted, allowed himself a faint smile. He had done what he came to do. The arena that had been a place of ridicule and doubt had become a place of awe and respect. And as he walked toward the exit, bruised and bleeding, the whispers followed him. "The human!" The one who stood when everyone expected him to fall. He had not only survived, he had changed minds. He had changed perceptions, and most importantly, he had proven that fragility and strength were not opposites but two sides of the same coin. Humanity was fragile, yes, but in that fragility was a power no one had expected, a power that could topple giants, face impossible odds, and leave the galaxy forever changed. The arena was quiet now, the dust settling, sparks fading, and silence stretching across the hall. The alien warrior lay on the floor, chest heaving, limbs trembling, his forearms still and broken. The cadets and spectators stared in awe, still unable to process what they had seen. The human stood at the center, bruised, bloodied, chest rising and falling steadily, eyes calm but fierce. His body ached, every muscle screaming, yet he remained upright. He had proven something far greater than victory. The colonel finally spoke, his voice low and reverent, silver scales glinting under the arena lights. "I misjudged humanity. You are not fragile, you are unstoppable." The human nodded slightly, acknowledging the words, not with pride but with quiet satisfaction. Outside the arena, communication channels across the galaxy buzzed with news. Messages and images spread like wildfire. A human had faced the strongest alien warrior and survived. A human had stood when all others expected collapse. Across distant planets, whispers spread. If a human can do this, what else can they accomplish? The human slowly walked toward the exit of the arena, limping slightly, body battered yet spirit unbroken. Cadets and spectators followed with their eyes, their whispers mixing with cheers and awe. For the first time, they truly understood what it meant to underestimate humanity. The alien warrior, finally finding his voice, spoke quietly to those around him. He was not just strong, he was relentless. He was fearless, he was... His words trailed off as he shook his head, realizing that no description could match what he had witnessed. The colonel leaned forward, watching the human leave, his mind racing. For decades he had trained warriors, judged species and measured strength. None had ever faced a human like this. None had ever stood so small, so fragile, and yet unbreakable. The human exited the arena, stepping into the light that shone from the massive doors. The cadets and spectators fell silent, letting him pass, letting history move with each step he took. Outside, a small group of humans and aliens had gathered, curious and cautious. They had heard the news, had seen images, and now wanted to witness the legend in person. The human looked at them, chest heaving, blood on his hands, sweat streaking his face. He raised a hand in quiet acknowledgement. Some bowed, others stepped back, and a few dared to smile. The human's presence alone had shifted perception, reshaped assumptions, and ignited curiosity across species. That afternoon, the Galactic Academy made an unprecedented announcement. A new course would be established, titled Human Tactics and Endurance. Aliens of every kind would be allowed to train with humans, to study their unique methods of strategy, resilience, and courage. In the following days, instructors visited the human, asking for guidance, for tips, for insight into how such a fragile creature could endure and dominate against impossible odds. The human shared quietly, simply teaching lessons learned from pain, loss, and determination. He spoke of teamwork, adaptation, patience, and courage, and everywhere he went, whispers followed. "The human!" The one who broke the strongest warrior. The one who taught us the meaning of endurance. The one who proved that fragility is power. In the Alien Academy, statues and records were updated to include his achievements. The cadets who had once laughed at his arrival now trained with him, learning the strength of the human spirit firsthand. Across the galaxy, reports circulated. Humans were no longer underestimated. Traders, commanders, and scholars all spoke in quiet respect about a species that could survive, endure, and fight in ways no one had predicted. Even the alien warrior who had been defeated rose slowly, nursing his wounds, and approached the human. For a long moment they stared at one another, predator and prey, warrior and challenger, both acknowledging a truth beyond words. The human extended a hand, not in arrogance but in mutual respect. The alien hesitated, then grasped it firmly. In that handshake, generations of misconception were overturned. Strength was no longer measured by size, armor, or weapons. It was measured by will, spirit, and the refusal to break. The human allowed himself a faint smile. Though his body ached, his mind was clear. He had done what he came to do. He had stood when everyone expected him to fall. He had changed minds, hearts, and perceptions. From that day forward, humanity would be remembered not for fragility, but for the unyielding courage that no galaxy, no warrior, and no obstacle could diminish. The legend of the human warrior spread across planets, moons, and star systems. In classrooms, training halls, and council chambers, cadets and commanders recounted the story, each retelling adding awe and respect. Even centuries later, the tale of the human who stood against. Spoke, the alien warrior growled again, trying to recover. He raised his blades one more time, but the human stepped forward, fearless. He ducked under a swing, slammed his elbow into the alien's chest, and drove him to the floor. The ring shook. The alien hit the ground hard. Gasping for air, the human placed one boot against the alien's chest and pressed down just enough to remind everyone watching who was still standing. The crowd erupted, some shouting in disbelief, others cheering with respect. For the first time, the alien cadets saw something they had never seen before. They saw fear in the eyes of their strongest warrior. The colonel clenched his claws against the railing. He couldn't look away. The human had no superhuman strength, no superior technology, yet he was dominating through skill, timing, and willpower. The alien tried to rise again, his forearms trembling, but the human stepped back, letting him stand. The human didn't need to finish it now. He wanted the message to be clear. This wasn't just survival, it was proof. The alien hissed, "You think you've won?" The human replied quietly, "No, I've only shown you what fragile can do." The alien roared again, fury drowning his words, and charged one last time. Both fighters collided at the center of the arena, their impact echoing through the hall. Sparks flew, dust rose, and for a heartbeat, no one could see who was left standing. When the air cleared, the alien was on his knees, armor cracked, weapons shattered. The human stood before him, breathing slowly, his hand still raised from the final strike. The colonel's voice came low and shaken. "Impossible." The human turned his head slightly, eyes fixed on him. "You haven't seen anything yet." Then he looked back at the fallen warrior and stepped away. The gong rang again. The second round was over. The alien was broken. The human was still standing. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Academy, silence filled the crowd, not out of pity, but out of awe. The colonel sat back slowly, realizing that the lesson he had planned had reversed itself. He had called humanity fragile. Yet now, every cadet in that room would remember the human who refused to break. The arena was thick with dust and the scent of scorched metal as the human faced the alien once more. The alien warriors, forearms flexed violently, his chest glowing with a deep red light that pulsed with rage and power. His armor was cracked, some panels hanging loose, but he still looked terrifying. A mountain of strength fueled by fury. The crowd watched in stunned silence, some whispering that the human could not last another moment. The colonel leaned forward, silver scales glinting in the lights, and hissed, "Finish it! End this fragile creature before he shames us all." The human stood still, chest heaving, muscles burning, yet his gaze never wavered. He remembered every scar, every loss, every teammate who had fallen on distant worlds. The memory sharpened his focus and strengthened his will. He knew this fight was more than survival. It was proof of humanity's spirit. The alien charged, faster than before, his four weapons spinning like deadly whips. The first strike slammed into the arena floor, sending shards of metal and sparks into the air. The human dodged, rolling beneath a spinning blade, feeling the wind slice past his face. His shoulder ached from a previous blow. His ribs screamed, but he didn't flinch. He moved closer, measuring the alien, studying the rhythm, waiting for the perfect moment. The alien growled, frustration mixing with rage. "How do you survive this?" he hissed, each word shaking the air around them. The human didn't answer. He only whispered to himself, "One chance." The alien swung again, two arms attacking at once, one forward, one backward. The human ducked low, grabbed the alien's nearest arm, and twisted with all his strength. The alien roared, a sound that shook the stands, but the human didn't release. His body trembled, pain shooting through his ribs, but he held firm, forcing the alien off balance. The crowd gasped. The alien's eyes widened in shock. No one had dared to hold him like this before. The human pushed, using leverage and momentum, and slammed the alien onto the arena floor. The impact made the ground quake. The alien tried to rise, but the human was already moving, stepping lightly, striking quickly. He slammed his knee into the alien's chest, then spun, delivering a punch to the head that made the alien stagger backward. The crowd could barely keep up with the speed, their mouths open in awe. The colonel's voice cracked, disbelief in every word. Impossible. How can one human... The alien raised his remaining arms, desperation in his movements, fury in his eyes. He lunged faster, more violently. But the human was ready. He sidestepped, grabbed one arm, and flipped the alien over his shoulder. The alien hit the ground with a deafening crash, dust and sparks exploding around him. The human dropped to one knee, gasping for breath. His chest heaved, blood trickling from a cut lip, sweat blinding his vision. But he kept his stance. He looked at the alien, who struggled to rise, trembling, exhausted, humiliated. The human's eyes burned with quiet fire. "Fragile," he whispered, voice low but cutting through the noise of the arena. "Doesn't mean weak." The alien roared one last time and charged. But the human met him head-on. He twisted his body, letting the alien's momentum carry him forward, then slammed his fist into the alien's chest, sending him crashing into the floor once more. The ground shook, cracks forming in the metal beneath them. The audience held their breath. The alien tried to lift his head, his armor smoking, his limbs trembling, but the human stood over him steady, resolute. The colonel leaned back, tail lashing the floor, silent for the first time. He had called humanity fragile, but now he realized that fragility could hold strength, determination, and courage that no armor or enhancements could match. The alien's breathing was heavy, his chest heaving, his arms shaking as he looked up at the human. The human extended a hand, not in mercy, but as a silent challenge, proof of dominance and resilience. The alien's eyes narrowed, a mix of rage and respect filling them. He could barely stand, yet he knew the fight was lost. The human straightened fully, head high, every muscle trembling but unbroken. His chest rose and fell steadily, his gaze unwavering. The crowd erupted into cheers, shouts, and applause, but the human ignored them. He had fought for more than glory. He had fought for every human who had been underestimated, every teammate lost, every lesson learned on distant battlefields. The colonel finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "I misjudged your species. They are not fragile. They are unstoppable." The human nodded slightly, acknowledging the words but not celebrating. He had made his point. The alien struggled to rise, bloodied, battered, broken, yet alive. The human stepped back, letting him catch his breath, showing that true strength was not only in victory, but in restraint. The arena fell silent for a moment, the only sounds the human's steady breathing and the alien's labored gasps. Every cadet, every officer, every spectator realized something profound. This small, seemingly fragile human had changed their perception forever. The human turned his eyes toward the stands, toward the colonel, and said softly but firmly, "Fragility is not weakness. It is the will to keep standing, even when everything tries to break you." The alien looked at him, a flicker of respect crossing his battered features. He had been bested, not just by strength, but by resolve, courage, and the unyielding spirit of a species they had underestimated. The human's chest rose and fell, his body battered but his spirit untouchable. The arena erupted once more, this time not with fear or mockery, but with awe and respect. The lesson was clear to all watching. Underestimate humanity at your own peril. The arena was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into a tense silence. The alien warrior lay on the ground, breathing hard, his armor broken, his forearms trembling as he tried to push himself up. Every cadet in the hall stared in disbelief. The human was still standing, chest rising and falling steadily, shoulders bruised, cuts on his face, yet his eyes were alive with fire. The crowd couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Some covered their mouths, unable to speak. Others shook their heads, trying to process what had just happened. Even the colonel, the mighty commander who had mocked humanity moments before, leaned back in his chair, silence on his face. His silver scales gleamed under the arena lights, but there was no pride, no anger, only awe. For the first time he realized he had misjudged a species he had always considered fragile and weak. The human had stood, beaten, bloodied, and exhausted, yet he had not broken. The alien warrior tried to rise again, gasping, his glowing eyes flickering with fury and respect, but the human did not move. He only watched, breathing slowly, giving the warrior space, showing control. The galactic arena was silent. 1,000 alien cadets stood shoulder to shoulder, their scaled, furred, and armored faces turned toward the single human who stepped into the light. He walked slowly, each footstep echoing across the metallic floor. His uniform was plain, his frame smaller than most around him. Yet something in his eyes made the crowd quiet. Whispers filled the hall. "Why is a human here? Is this a joke?" Fragile creatures. They break in seconds. Up on the platform, the commanding officer, a tall reptilian figure with silver scales that glowed under the arena lights, looked down at the human. A cruel smile crossed his face. He leaned toward the microphone and his voice thundered through the hall. "Today," he said, "we will test the endurance of a species known for weakness. Humans. Soft skin, slow hearts, fragile bones." A wave of laughter rolled through the alien ranks. The human did not react. He stood straight, eyes forward. The colonel raised a clawed hand and motioned to the far gate. "Bring in my strongest student." The metal doors rumbled open. A figure stepped out, a towering alien warrior, his body covered in armor that looked carved from stone. Forearms flexed as he moved, each hand holding a different weapon. The floor trembled under his steps. The cadets began to chant his name, their voices merging into a single roar. To them, this was entertainment. To the human, it was something else, a test of every lesson ever learned about survival. He did not bow. He only adjusted the gloves on his hands, the same way soldiers on Earth once did before stepping into war. From the command booth, the colonel's voice echoed again, mocking and sure. "Do not worry, little human. We will stop the match before your body breaks. We are not monsters." The human looked up at the colonel. His voice was quiet, steady, and sharp enough to cut through the laughter. "You already are." A hush fell over the arena. The colonel's eyes narrowed. He gestured sharply. "Begin." A deep gong rang through the hall. The alien warrior lunged forward. The sound of his footsteps was like thunder. He swung one massive arm, the blade in his hand slicing through the air where the human's head had been a moment before. But the human was gone, sliding aside. Quick, precise, almost calm, the alien's next strike shattered the floor tiles. Dust filled the air. The crowd shouted in excitement. But the human still stood. Not one hit had landed. He moved with small, sharp motions, every step measured, every breath counted. He didn't try to match the alien's strength. He didn't need to. He was reading him, his rhythm, his speed, his mistakes. The colonel watched with growing interest. His smile faded slightly. "Strange," he muttered. "No fear, no panic." Below, the alien warrior swung again, faster this time, two weapons spinning in a blur. One cut through the human's shoulder guard, another slammed into the floor near his leg. The crowd gasped as sparks flew. Still, the human didn't strike back. He was studying, waiting. For a moment, the alien paused. His forearms flexed, armor humming with power. He looked at the human with pure contempt. "You're finished, fragile one." The human didn't answer. His eyes drifted upward, to the roof of the arena where the banners of every species hung. Among them, the flag of Earth, torn and small, moved in the wind of the battle. He remembered another battlefield, one covered in red dust and silence. The faces of his team came back to him, men and women who never returned from Mars. Their laughter, their bravery, their final moments. He whispered softly under his breath, words only he could hear. "For them." Then he dropped into a low stance. The alien warrior charged again, raising all four weapons high. The colonel leaned forward, his silver eyes shining. "End it!" The arena shook as the alien's strike came down. A cloud of dust exploded outward. When it cleared, the alien's weapons were buried deep into the floor. The human was gone again. A sharp sound followed, the echo of movement. Before anyone could react, the human appeared behind the alien. One gloved hand pressed against the joint in the creature's armor. A single motion, a twist. A sound like cracking stone filled the air. The alien staggered. His upper right arm fell limp. Gasps spread through the arena. The human had moved too fast for their eyes to follow. The colonel stood from his chair. Impossible. But the human still didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stepped back, breathing evenly, eyes locked on his opponent. The alien roared, humiliated, furious, and slammed his fists into the ground. The arena floor split open under his rage. Dust filled the air again. Lights flickered. The crowd screamed for more. Through the haze, the human stood, body tense, heart steady. He whispered again, "For them." And when the alien rushed forward the second time, the human didn't move. He waited, patient, silent, unshaken, because this wasn't about winning a fight. It was about proving what humanity really was. The gong rang again, the sound marking the end of the first round. The alien stopped, breathing hard, fury in his eyes. The human didn't look tired. The colonel leaned back in silence. He had called humanity fragile. But as the dust cleared and the human lifted his chin toward the stands, everyone in that arena began to wonder if fragility could fight like that. What did strength even mean? The arena lights flickered as the second round began. The alien warrior's forearms flexed, his armor glowing with red energy lines that pulsed like veins of fire. He was angry now, and his roar shook the entire training dome. The crowd screamed his name again, their voices echoing from the metal walls. But the human stood still, calm, watching every motion. The colonel leaned forward from his command chair, his silver eyes narrow. He wanted to see the human break. To him, this was no longer training. It was a lesson. He wanted every cadet in the hall to remember that humans were weak. The alien warrior stomped forward, his heavy feet cracking the floor beneath him. One weapon sliced through the air. Another followed close behind. The sound was sharp, fast, deadly. But the human moved like water, sliding between strikes, bending just enough to let each blade miss by inches. He had no armor like the alien, no glowing shield, no cyber implants, yet he flowed with quiet control. Every movement looked like instinct, like rhythm learned from pain and survival. The alien growled in frustration. He attacked again, faster, wilder. His power made shockwaves that pushed dust and sparks around the ring. But still, the human refused to fall. He stepped backward once, then forward again, using the alien's weight against him. He reached out, grabbed one of the alien's wrists, and twisted. The sound of metal snapping filled the air. The alien roared, his weapon flying out of his grip. The crowd gasped. No one had ever done that to him before. The colonel stood from his chair, surprised. His tail lashed the floor behind him. He turned to his aides and hissed, "What is this human made of?" No one answered. Their eyes were fixed on the ring where the impossible was happening. The alien charged again, rage burning through him. He used his lower arms to grab the human by the torso, lifting him off the ground. The human's boots kicked the air, and the audience cheered. They thought it was over. The alien slammed the human against the arena wall. The sound was like thunder. The human's head snapped back, pain flashing across his face. But instead of collapsing, he used the wall itself to push off and drive his knee into the alien's throat. The alien stumbled backward, choking. The human landed on his feet, breathing hard. He wiped blood from his lip, his eyes cold but alive. The colonel's voice echoed again, "End this! Crush him!" The alien roared in response, his body glowing brighter, his armor plates split apart, revealing living muscle enhanced with mechanical fibers. He was stronger, faster, deadlier, but the human wasn't afraid. He circled slowly, one hand clenched, the other hanging limp. He could feel the ache in his ribs, the burning in his lungs, but he didn't stop. He had seen worse before. He had lived through silence after explosions, seen whole teams disappear into red dust on foreign planets. He knew what it meant to fight when you had nothing left to give. The alien lunged again, two blades cutting for the human's throat. This time the human didn't dodge. He stepped inside the attack, closer than anyone thought possible, and struck. The punch was short, precise, brutal. It hit the alien right under the jaw. The impact echoed like a cannon blast. The alien stumbled backward. Eyes wide, the crowd fell silent. The human dropped to one knee, exhausted, breathing hard. The alien swayed, disoriented, his balance gone. The colonel's face was frozen in disbelief. For a moment, time itself stopped. All eyes were on the fragile creature who had just made a monster bleed. The human rose slowly, shoulders trembling but gaze steady. He looked up toward the colonel's stand and said, his voice rough but clear, "You called us fragile because you don't understand what keeps us standing. No one."